Hi everyone, I'm Philp from the UK BIM Task Group, and welcome to my session. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm going to give a bit of update in terms of the Level 2 UK programme and how you can start to get ready for your journey through. So we've got about half an hour session in terms of the webinar, so I hope you can all hear me okay. So who am I? Well, I'm David Philp. I'm part of the UK BIM Task Group helping UK government and indeed UK industry as well get ready for the Level 2 BIM programme. And what we're seeing is building information modelling. Well, one of the things, it's not just centric to UK, that's getting, it's happening all around the world in terms of maybe financial stimulus, or we're seeing more and more, if you like, UK governments and clients starting to think about BIM in terms of deliverables, but also how it improves procurement and starting to think about project delivery methods as well. So different ways of working, bringing together BIM and Lean. So one of the big things in terms of the journey, I generally believe it's not a matter of if, but when your firm is going to implement BIM. And the big thing is, are you going fast enough to get ready as we head towards 2016? So when we talk about BIM, what we're actually talking about, I think most people now recognize it as a verb. We're talking about the act of building and information modeling. I think we're all starting to see it now, thinking more and more about the virtualization of that asset lifecycle model. Start to think about how we create, if you like, the model, the digital database, how we can analyze it, evaluate it, make smart decisions, and start people to understand how that, if you like, the digital environment is going to interact in terms of reality. So we're starting to think more and more about thinking about outcomes. And we're also starting to think more and more when we get ready, not just through as contractor, the designer, but indeed the client or the project manager, starting to think about more and more about digital briefing and digital project management. And what we're seeing more and more, building better before built, taking that waste out in terms of building in that digital sandpit, and then think about optimized outcomes in terms of what we're doing. I think what we've seen in terms since we started the program back in 2011, BIM for us is to be something become that, if you like, a bit of metaphor for industry change. Starting to think about how BIM and using computational data for procurement decisions. I think that's a really important thing when we think about getting ready. Think about how you can use, if you like, your digital data sets for start to make smarter procurement decisions and start to think about using computer readable data. So it brings you a bit of a Trojan horse, I think, to some degrees. It comes in various disguises, but I think it's helping us with a compelling vision of what an industry without waste could look like. So just jump back. There's been recent articles as well, I think they'll be quite important. It's starting to show actually, how does BIM start to relate in terms of your journey. It might not be purely within the UK, but you can see some interesting things in terms of country journeys, and I think it's interesting, and one of the big ones for me is Singapore. It's all about hyper-modernization. I think it's a big part. It's not just about new standards, but how do we start to get better workflows and better efficiencies through BIM-focused ways of working. But we're starting to see BIM moving right the way through all the different countries. And I think this is an interesting article as well. It maybe gives it a bit of, if you like, perspective in where we're doing in the UK. I think it's always good to benchmark, but this is one of the main Italian economic newspapers a couple of weeks back. They was looking at the value proposition of BIM, and it noted there in terms of, it's seen as the most advanced is the UK, in terms of the member states, because of the work of the UK BIM Task Group, but really in terms of the reference of the tools, the wrapper would put out what we're calling by Level 2, and also the clients that we're starting to see emerging in terms of flagship clients, such as High Speed 2, they're going to have a requirement for Level 2 as a minimum standard. So these things is to start to figure out getting ready. There's a real context and background for it. But when we talk about getting ready, there's lots of different pools in the UK for BIM, especially now more and more at client level. We've got the UK government mandating Level 2 BIM, and they'll certainly procure projects by end of March 2016. So increasingly, there's big pipelines coming through, clients requiring all their assets in a digital format. So there's lots of demand, and different ways of getting ready, but Level 2 is becoming an industry standard, and we're almost there completing. The two slides, side by side, start to show in terms of actually, the savings that have been made. You can see on the left-hand side, you can see the savings regularly between 12 and 20% that are coming through in terms of BIM. It's part of a wider government construction strategy, and that's an important point as you start to think about getting ready. Don't think about BIM in isolation. Think about BIM as part of your wider, if you like, change program, how it comes together with maybe lean working, digital design for manufacturing assembly. So we're bringing all these different pieces and components together. On the right-hand side, you can start to see where we are in terms of trajectories for adoption. Now, that was last year. There's probably now over £10 billion of what they're going through the public sector, and that excludes, if you like, high-speed 2, Thames Tideway. So if you were to aggregate them all together, there's probably at least, if you like, 50 billion of level 2 projects coming through the public purse at this moment in time, which will continue to grow as we get to 2016. So there is a big pipeline coming through that should give you confidence. And this is the work that the BIM task force has been doing in terms of helping industry getting ready and with government departments. And a lot of that, as you can see, has been round about the production of standards there in the middle. Start to think about, okay, we support things, but we need to have some degree of consistency. And the big part around that's been the heavy lifting, has been the development of standards, tools and guides to help. And as we move to 2016, the BIM task group will continue. It will be under, I wouldn't say the terms of legacy, but under a delivery organisation, and government departments will have various stewardship groups as well, which are now in place. And we're starting to think more and more about linkage to the industrial strategy, and we'll come on to at the end of the programme, the whole concept of a digital built written. We're also seeing a lot of work now in terms of, when we get ready in terms of the European BIM journey as well. And you can see that this is a BIM for EU working group, and people are starting to think now about how we exchange best practice, cultural change, and actually working together for 28 member states. And the BIM task group has been key in terms of setting that up and forming these discussions around about what that looks like. And we can see countries such as France and Germany already starting to create their own similar BIM task groups in terms of that when they plan. But the key to this, and I think in terms of your own journey, it's starting to think more and more about how do you adopt BIM, both in the context of level 1 and level 2. There's two standards there, which we often refer to. And standards are really important to us in the UK because they give us consistency in terms of adoption, and it gives people that are working on projects or programs accurate to that same tested and validated data in the supply chain. You can start to see some of the documentation that's there around about level 2 BIM on the screen there, that British Standard have been helping us complete over the last period. So by June of this year, all the level 2 components will be in place, and we'll start to unpack these now in a bit more detail. This is what level 2 is, loosely if you like, as a construct, but it's a series of domain and collaborative federated models. So by domains, we mean maybe architectural models, structural models, civil models that are collaborated, i.e. they're brought together in a common data environment. And that information is defined, and we exchange information via digital data transactions. So we're starting to think about that in a validated form, and in a form that can be reused as well. So that's a brief in terms of what level 2 is. So we're thinking about common data environment, and we're starting to think more and more about how we can validate the information and having very clear information requirements as we go through that process. And this is probably the big driver for, if you like, for level 2. It's about clients that are buying their data once. You can see there the sawtooth for the traditional client going for a plan of work, buying their data many times. Let's go through it, but you can see the green line that goes above it. So we're starting to see through a BIM life cycle, as we go through that plan of work, clients are able to grow data sets to make earlier, more well-informed decisions. But let's start with level 1 BIM, and level 1 BIM for me is made up of two really key components, the foundation. We have our BS 7000, or Design Management Part 4, so Design Management, a key part of level 1 BIM. And then we have a document called BS 1192 2007, which sets a key part. It puts, if you like, a common data environment together. How we start to think about managing and sharing information in the project, if you like, that whole project life cycle that are really so keen. We then, if you like, come into level 2. So please, lots of people try and jump to level 2, but start to think about getting your foundation in level 1, get a common data environment in place. And then we start to build upon that with our first piece. So the first main part of the jigsaw is PAS 1192 Part 2. It went out in 2013, and these documents are available free of charge on the UK BIM website. And this looks at the information management process during the capital expenditure stages. So we start to think about how we manage our digital information, moving from that work in progress, making sure we've got some degree of, a gateway in terms of approving as it moves to shared, publish and archive. So we're starting to think about information flow through what we refer to as that project information model. It's the key thing. We've got two things. The project information model in the asset information model pre-handover. So you can see there the document on the left. It's been downloaded at least 15,000 times from the British website since it came out in 2013. So if you look at the diagram on the right, you can see they're right at the heart in terms of asset capital delivery. We have our document, and that gives us that information cycle. And then we have coming out a series of supporting tools with the CIC BIM protocol, which injects it into the contract. We have BS 1192 Part 4 COBE, and that's used as a tool for information exchange, like codification, and it lets it exchange data in an open format that can be validated. We then have two parts of the jigsaw which will be complete very soon. In fact, the beta version comes out in April of this year. Via Reba Enterprises. It's called the Digital Plan of Works. And we've got the core classification system coming out. And these will help us describe both geometrical data sets and non-graphical data sets in a consistent manner and offer a free tool, if you like, that's going to help us describe our information requirements a lot better and be able to name them through our core classification, which will be the latest form of Uniclass. As you move out, you can start to see some of the values that we can start to realize by putting that process and the tools together. And we're starting to put the next layer of the wrapper onto it as well, which is BS 536, which is soft landings. And soft landings, if you like, is a key part of the level 2 process. And we've got the outer layer, the last part that's going to be a part of the level 2 is PAS 1102 Part 5, which looks at the mindful security or specification for secure mounted BIM right through that digital built environment. So that's a key thing in terms of the asset capital delivery stages. You can start to see the process that we go through, but it's essentially about clients becoming good. It starts on the right-hand side where people know what they want. What information do I know I want as a client? What information do I need? And that will be prescribed in employer's information requirement documentation. It goes out, we go for a series of, if you like, almost, I think of almost as our digital method statements in terms of our BIM, if you like, execution plans coming back from the supply chain. And it's all brought together in what we call a master information delivery plan, or MIDIP, that starts to codify the responsibilities, the level of detail, and the level of information of our different parts of these different activities as we go through that plan of work. We then start to build the PIM, the project information model, both in terms of graphical data, the non-graphical, and documentation. So we're starting to build up data sets. We're starting to transact upon that as we go through our design, our construction, and you start to see the transaction. Information is growing, but we have information exchanges that are validating key decision points at the end of a stage or interim stages. Then ultimately we move through to our asset information model. So we're then, as we go from stage 6 to 7, we're moving from the project information model to that asset information at the handover point, which takes us nicely onto PAS 1192 Part 3, which is starting to think about the same concepts, but this time during that asset operation. So if you like, the green one in terms of capital expenditure, for a supply chain CapEx project, and the orange document looks more and more in terms of asset operation. So again, you can see there it's the same tools that support, other than having the protocol, but we start to get different value propositions being realized there. So we've got two companion documents that work very much hand in glove. Another key point of the Level 2 program is BS 1192 Part 4 COBE, a construction operation building information exchange. And again, it's both for civil and their vertical assets as well. And it's a key thing for us, being able to, if you like, transact in terms of validated information. And that's probably one of the key things for people to start to think about. How do we get consistent data sets that we can mine, we can make smart decisions, and we can actually move things into CAFM systems as well. So you can see the extract there from the bridge with our 3D model. We can cut a 2D PDF image from it, or we can extract it out as a COBE data set that we can actually start to do something with. Maybe moving it somewhere, actually be able to, if you like, query that data set. So we're starting to think about transactional data and how we start to relate all these different data sets together. We mentioned at level 2 we're looking to get data in a reusable form. So you can see there how we've taken the data, if you like, out the native model into COBE, and we're starting to automate it and map it through into a computer-assisted facilities modeling system. So COBE is a key part of level 2. So please, I would urge people to get their head around about it. Think of it almost, if you will, in terms of a luggage, piece of luggage with transparent sides. You can see where you want to put different things in terms of spaces, systems, components, and you can take that back from a stage or one place to a different and take information out of it. As we mentioned, we've got the digital plan of works coming out in April, and this looks to articulate in terms of describing information, but also how we start to respond to what we call plain language questions, and looking at making sure we've got appropriate levels of information at those appropriate points in time, either for COBE or to be PDF or analysis sort of thing. But think about right information at the right time that has clear purpose and responds, if you like, to a question. So it might be a carbon question, it might be a cost question, or it might be a program question. This is a couple of snapshots from the development model. You can see there it's NBS, or Riva Enterprises, that have won the competition for Innovate UK. And you can see their early stage in terms of a client persona. You can start to come in and describe. It's a free tool to start to put the project objectives together, responsibilities. You can see there it's a client persona, what information needed at stage one. And again, it's an early point, so it's right at the very beginning of BIM in terms of the journey. And you can see the key thing. You can start to export this data through to COBE, to IFC, or Microsoft Office. So it starts to build capability, and it becomes a great way of clients actually describing what information they want in a digital manner. We're now moving on a stage to stage 2, and you can start to see the different objects there. And we're starting to describe both the level of detail in terms of geometrical information and the level of information non-graphical. By default, will be set to what's appropriate for a certain stage in terms of a plan of work, but they can be decoupled. So you might increase the level of information to suit a procurement question, or you might up the amount of geographical, but again, it's tying back to having clear purpose in terms of what we're doing. So the tool will be out in April of this year. You can start to see some examples of what it will look like and how you can, for your own project, start to build up your key data sets. So it's important as you get ready to start to think about the play-off between geometrical models and non-graphical data. And you can see this slide from Crossrail. You can see the importance, if you like, of blue. The non-graphical data increases as you go through the project life cycle. The geometrical data is really important in terms of people understanding a concept, or people understanding design from, if you like, coordination. But we're starting to think at that point about maybe specification data. We're starting to think about warranty data. As we start to move to O&M, we start to see, if you like, we've switched over, and the non-graphical data is probably more important at that point than the geometrical nature. So start to think about what does that look like for your projects, and how do you make sure that you're describing and understand your plain language questions as you go through each stage of that program. And this is the whole level 2 process in terms of what clients are doing. Number one, you're building a capability to deliver. You want a supply chain that can actually do this in a digital way for you. You want to make sure you've defined your information requirements in terms of timings, how much details are actually going to be required. And for a protocol, you're actually buying the right to maybe use the data. You might not want to buy the IP, but you might want to use it for certain purposes, such as facilities management, procurement, ETC, that needs to be defined. I can start to see there we also need to define actually what the model outputs are in terms of the forms and the amount of detail that will sit within them as well. And we mentioned already in terms of having a defined process that everybody's working to for both CapEx and OpEx delivery. And indeed, we've got agreed standards of exchange, such as COBE, our non-graphical information sets, and of course geometrical as well. So you can start to see there some of the key things that we're looking for, the key documents, capability to deliver, assessed through both a PAS 91 pre-qualification document and the setting out in the ITT of BIM requirements. Client becoming very good at articulating information requirements in terms of an employer's information requirement. You can imagine if you're in the supply chain, you're responding back with a BIM execution plan. The right to use the data and the model outputs are defined within, if you like, the protocol document. We've got management of the process for an information manager, that obligation, and we've got the agreed data exchanges again set out in the protocol appendix as well. So we're starting to pull all these documents together and start to think about how they all work. And you can start to see it's not, and this is an important part as you get ready for your journey, think about not just BIM in isolation, but what other parts of your toolkit you need to bring together as well. You can see there this is the Ministry of Justice. So as well as the BIM program, we've created a library of components, but linking up to lean project and construction management, benchmarking, technical standards. So please don't think about it in isolation, but think about how you'll start to link, if you like, your project toolkit using BIM as a component. So you've got to start to think about the interplay of BIM along with all these other parts of the process as well. And start to reimagine, what does this mean in terms of the job roles within your organisation? Are we going to start to change and we move to a digital environment? We're starting to think more and more about contractors working in real time, which we often call integrated concurrency, designers that are focusing more and more in terms of outcomes. Start to think about how that changes the roles, responsibilities, and what upskilling is going to be required. Because we're starting to see, I think, huge disruption in terms of forthcoming disruption from a real positive way, innovation, new ways of working. We're starting to see on the right-hand side, you can see there, business model simulation. So not just looking at how do we simulate to build, but actually, conversions of things such as serious gaming. How do we actually test and the prototype of what's happening on the shop floor? So I'm thinking about serious gaming and how that helps shape serious outcomes. And BIM should be very much outcome-based in terms of what we're doing. And we always said that level 2 is very much a staging post. And a couple of weeks back, you can see the right, Vince Cable, Secretary of State, launched the whole concept of a digital built Britain, if you like, the next stage in our programme. Starting to think about moving the whole industry, if you like, from very much an analog to a digital economy. Starting to think about how we support that, the services we provide, and it's very important to say how we build upon what's been achieved in terms of level 2. But again, as we said there on the presentation, you start to think about getting ready for level 2. It's taken us 5 years to mobilise, and in June this year, all the component parts will be together. But we're working then to actually try and put them together into that engine and start to drive real efficiency in terms of what we're doing. So how's level 3 is going to be a complete paradigm shift, if you like, moving from both collaboration to integration. We've got to think about the time it will take that industry change to happen. Will be probably on the basis of about 8 to 10 years in terms of mobilisation. So it's important that we see the vision, the business plan of level 3, but at the same time for industry, it's very important that people can upskill, maybe going from level 1 to level 2, or indeed even just starting the level 1 journey. So this is very much where the priority is at this moment in time. And it's really key that people can start on that journey. But you can start to see the vision, and you can start to see that 2016 itself is just a staging post on the journey in terms of what's next. Level 3, we start to think about things such as the whole Internet of Things, or free internets, and or IOEs as they're often thought in terms of communication, logistics, and transportation. So I'm thinking about sensor-rich assets. We can see it in other industries in terms of maybe Formula 1, an asset, a racing car that's sensor-rich, that's feeding back through telemetry, real-time data that people are making smart decisions, maybe in terms of fuel changes or tyre degradation. And that changes it. If we take that same model and apply it to our built environment, we can start to think about intelligent buildings and infrastructure. You can see the 3 triangles on the right-hand side there. Level 2 down the bottom are capital delivery for a series of transactional exchanges. We then start to think more up at the top in terms of operation. We start to think about actually performance data, performance coming through sensor-rich data sets. We can start to imagine, if you like, start to think of a way to move from transactional contracts to performance-based contracts. And maybe in terms of engines, it's power by the hour, and we do the same in terms of thinking more about performance economics in terms of construction. So it's a key thing. Level 3 will think about telemetry, performance and operation of assets. And we've got working groups such as the Manufacturer Strategic BIM Forum start to think about how we integrate these, and through this telemetry start to think about whole life cost and more about, if you like, in-service carbon output. So smart asset integration is going to be a key part of what we're doing under the level 2 program. So you see it coming more and more under the heading of digital built routing. And you can see there on the right-hand side the different stages. We've got what we're calling a level 3A. So it will move again. This is still 8 to 10 years away, but start to think about enabling improvements in the level 2 model. How do we optimize the great work we're doing? Because we want to make sure, as we move from level 2 to level 3, there's no loss of data. All this great data that was set up is really important. But to go from level 2 to 3, you've got to pass through it. You've got to do that 1, 2, 3. It'd be very difficult not to do that. We then start to think about level 3B, enabling new technologies and systems. Almost starting to think about an industry 4.0, starting to think about sensor-rich. 3C, we talked about performance management. How do you start to unlock what that could look like? And then ultimately, it's about keeping the UK at the vanguard in terms of digital leadership. Not just in terms of individual assets, but you can see in terms of this matrix, in terms of thinking about smart buildings, smart linear infrastructure, smart utilities. And you can see the red line stops, because then we start to think about beyond that in terms of the smart user, which ultimately form level 4. But all this is good, but at this moment in time we need to start to think about delivering on level 2, which is really key in terms of what we're doing. So to recap, let's start back to level 1. So level 1, think about design management, think about your common data environment that are really key. Again, from a client point of view, tying that with smart procurement routes. We'll come on to level 2. We're starting to think about information management, or PAS 1, 1, and 2, part 2 and part 3, becoming good at finding information, becoming good at exchanging it. We've got COBE there, the construction operation building, to help as a tool to facilitate data exchanges. We've also got, as we mentioned, soft landings, helping, if you like, join our CAPEX and OPEX together to make sure we're thinking about the entire asset lifecycle in a lot more detail. We've also got cybersecurity within there. We're also starting to think about, other different parts in terms of the information manager, starting to glue it all together. And we've got tools coming up in terms of classification, the digital plan of work that will help it make it a lot easier in build capacity. So put all these things together in terms of your journey plan, but always start in terms of outcome. Don't just do this because a client's asking for it. Try and look at your own workflows. How can BIM improve upon that one, and then marry your technology stack to your improved workflows. Don't buy some technology and then try and change things. Start off with your processes. Start thinking about improved workflows. Measure if you can, and then start thinking how these tools can come in, and start to think about the technologies to support. Because the whole thing, level 2 BIM is very much as much culture and people change program as a technology one. So key to us is very much about culture, the values of it, working in a collaborative environment. We've got the tools, the processes that make sure that we can do this in terms of collaborative information management, and then ultimately you've got your technology, the digital, if you like, proprietary open standards that will help do that. So please, all the things we've talked about, they're on the BIM Task Group website. It is down, I've got to note, for about a couple of hours for a bit of maintenance, but you can get all these documents free of charge there, and you can also follow us on at BIM GCS in terms of Twitter. So at that point, Andy, I think we've got about 10 minutes for some questions.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. And I thought this is quite a good one to start off with, because clearly everyone's at sort of different levels with regard to their sort of personal BIM journey. But someone asked, how do you suggest the best way to train yourself in the use of BIM if you're a fresh graduate?
It's a really good question. And we think, we'll always say that, in terms of, it's still about understanding the real basics. And folk often tend to jump onto the tools because the tool stuff looks really, really cool, sort of thing. But actually, one of the big things to say is go back to the real basics. Understand procurement, understand design management, understand the collaborative ways of working. So we mentioned like the B7000. Have a look at them. Have a look at BS 2007, that common data environment. I think for a young graduate, or indeed anybody coming into the BIM journey, these foundations are really, really so important. Understand how the design management process works and how that fits together with procurement. Then start to look at the information management processes that are set out, and then start to look at how the tools can help to inject it. But don't think about BIM in isolation. We mentioned a key thing as well. Look to the left. It's always think about STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and maths. These things are still so important. And also, I think as well, BIM's making us look more and more about the built environment. I think somebody coming into construction nowadays has to have a much more sort of wider focus. Understand all these different roles and responsibilities, especially from an operational perspective. Is key. But yeah, get excited, just get amongst it, and really, give us all in the industry a bit of a kick. I think we really need it.
Yeah, good stuff. And how does the BIM Task Group envisage 3D being rolled out in 2016? Will there be an industry training for cost loading models, etc.?
Sorry, in terms of 3D?
It said, sorry, 5D. Sorry, how does the BIM Task Group envisage 5D being rolled out in 2016?
No, I mean, very much. I mean, we all, and I think people often get mixed up. We're talking about levels of maturity, the 0, 1, 2, 3. But on top of that, as you rightly say, we've got our three-dimensional X, Y, Z. We've got the 3D plus time, which is our what we call loosely a 4D, and then what people often refer to as cost, if you like, is that fifth dimension. already the cost model could be a component of level 2. And we're starting to see some, some quite smart stuff coming out now. People especially putting cost into the library component. So it could be very much a component of level 2 already under the employer's information requirements. But I think it's fair to say we're seeing a couple of things happening. We're seeing number one is the low-hanging fruit, which is digital quantity takeoff. People taking quantities out of the model. We're starting to see people, if you like, starting to use it for, looking at cost scenario planning, putting together with time or risk sort of thing. And then people starting to think about more, could ultimately, for level 3, could we start to think about even the use of self-procurement for all these digital kits of parts as well. So it could, the 5D could already be a part of level 2 BIM as a deliverable under an EIR.
That's it. And how can we encourage clients, designers, contractors to engage temporary works designers in the use of BIM?
It's a really good question. I think we're starting to see a lot. For me, actually, temporary works has been one of, I think, the early adopters of also some great work coming through because, it lends itself so naturally, I think, especially when retained estate, where we can come in, we can laser scan something pretty rapidly, and we don't have to bring it into a 3D model. We can often just overlay our temporary works within there. I think it's like anything. We've got to show the value proposition in terms of being able to articulate, the benefits of doing temporary works in BIM are the following. As a client, it's maybe going to help you de-risk. Sure. So I think we've got to maybe articulate the business case a bit more and just get some of the case studies out there. But the temporary work designers, I think, are doing a real great job in there. And there's a lot of sort of kits of parts starting to, from a temporary work side, starting to get digitized as well. So again, just trying to get a few more of the case studies out there. We do have working groups, such as BIM for clients that, if we get any of that information coming in, we will happily as a task group help share and get out there amongst the community.
Because that same person asked, does temporary works have an important part to play in BIM? So it sounds like they need to talk to the BIM working groups. That sounds to me.
Yeah, very much. I see it as a key part. And I think the big thing is we're moving to a lot more retained estate shops. So we've got obviously temporary works and new build as well, or false work and form work, but we're seeing much more BIM sort of kicking retained estate. Where it's maybe heavily loaded, those slappings or whatever. They've got a fair bit of temporary work, so there's a real, especially juxtaposed between old and new, it's perfect, for BIM and temporary works to come together as great partners.
Who will own intellectual property rights of bespoke designs within a 3D model? Is this expected to be written into the appointment documents?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's why we're using the protocol. The protocol will allow a client to actually say what they want. So you can imagine if often you just might be buying the use of the data, you might not be buying the IP, and that would be written into the protocol. But in certain cases, if you're a client that's maybe wanting to build a kit of parts, then if you like, you would very much want to buy the IP for it. But again, it just depends job by job, and that would be injected, if you like, into that commercial wrapper through the BIM protocol. But again, that's why level 2 also keeps things in domains. It keeps it quite simple. You still got an architectural model, a construction model. There's no single model, if you like, other than maybe the federated model. So everybody's still working on level 2, a domain model, or you go through to level 3, that's when the big challenges happen.
Okay. Listen, so noted your information delivery cycle diagram was slightly different than the one published in 2013. Is there any plans to reissue the pack?
No, I've got to be honest, it's just a bit laziness on my behalf. I've probably had that once. I've had that slide since probably about 2010 there sort of thing. So yeah, apologies and well spotted.
We're not gonna change that just yet. Our temporary works friend asked, who should be engaging temporary work suppliers such as formwork and scaffold suppliers? How does that piece in?
Yeah, I mean, there's various groups. Number one for, there's two groups for, the manufacturers of temporary work component. We've got BIM for MM², BIM for manufacturing and manufacturers, which would be fantastic. And we've got various groups, if you like, that look at very much in terms of specialist engineers. We've also got the BIM for SME group that, engaging with those groups would be absolutely perfect. And we do have, there's a couple of scaffolding organisations on a couple of our groups as well.
This, I suppose, a bit of a general question, is that how can builders prepare for these changes? Anything to stay on top of the competition? think there's a lot of things you can do there.
No, I think for a building point of view, I think builders are really well placed. They're really pretty good at digital technology. I mean, that's my background. I mean, I was a main contractor, for 20 years. And one of the big things to see is the mobility of data. I think back. I started my life out as a setting out engineer. I remember starting in fields in Scotland. With a plan, usually blowing out my hand, sort of thing. And now the reality is, you can generally, I think it's fair to say, all, if like vendors, the software for viewing models is all free. If you go on the BIM Task Group website, Technology Alliance, you'll see all the free stuff that's there. So, on your smartphone or wherever, you can download a model, you can get your coordinates, you set out for it. There's loads of free tools out there, from the building community, especially around about photogrammetry and such like. Again, that's going to help, make you more efficient and be able to do some great stuff, taking quantities off. It's trying to automate a lot of the processes where there may be a lot of administrative burden. And I think if you're a builder, you want to make life easy in terms of what you're doing. So there's some great stuff out there, for, especially from the building point of view. But it's a good question because BIM, I think, used to be very much designer centric. But there's a lot of great tools out there that I think more and more about program management through BIM, quality assurance or such like snagging. There's some great digital tools that we see that interplay now between some of our smart tech that we've got and some of the sort of modelling components.
Someone asked, is there likely to be a standard brought out for all the software manufacturers to work to instead of being a Wild West operation, which we are currently seeing?
Yeah, what we do is, it's a good question. We've got a group called the Vendors Technology Alliance. So we brought them together back, I think it's 2011. It's chaired by Syria, to try and encourage them to work well together and to work towards open data standards. And the government has obviously mandated COBE, which is an open standard. And what we've seen actually through the use of it, by mandating that, a lot more people are actually using IFC to try and get, the COBE data set out. So we're starting to see a lot of the manufacturers moving towards at least standardization of getting, at least open data export or output capability. But we work with this group to try and get them to play well together and sort of have some degree of consistency.
Okay, great stuff. Well, that's 10 minutes up. So thank you very much, David. I think that was a great session. Have you got any sort of last thoughts?
Yeah, please. I mean, the BIM Task Group website will be back on tomorrow. Please visit. Have a look at documents. Don't bury your head in the sand. Level 2 BIM will happen. And ultimately we will at some point in the future move to level 3. This is a great opportunity. Don't just be driven by because your clients want it. There's a real value proposition in level 2. Get ready. Start to think about how you manage your information. You are probably already on the level 2 journey already. You might not know it. But get excited, it's exciting times there. And actually think about, the legacy you're going to leave for the next generation as well. I mean, I want to, leave a legacy that, the young people thinking about careers think, hey, construction is a place that's innovative, it's technologically advanced. I want to be part of that. Do we really want to leave a legacy that's something that's analog, traditional, it's perceived as being, everything's been about, if like that one-off bang things. You are a diverse industry, we need to leave a legacy that's going to keep us proud. So think about your role as leaders in industry.
Great stuff.
Thank
you very much. You take care, and thanks very much to everyone for tuning in. And as I said, look, next month we've got the BIM Webinar 3.0 with Dr. Anne Kemp. So I've been sending information regarding that, and also a recording of this will be up on my website in the next sort of couple of days, and I'll be sending the link to that. So thanks everyone for joining, and over and out. Many thanks.
Cheers, and bye.
Bye.